So if one major port goes down, it literally impacts the whole sum of all the parts.
In the short term for the industry, there isn't a great plan.
Immediate impacts on the U.S. automakers. The auto industry has already been dealing with supply issues, chip shortages.
So when we picked up this 2007 5.9 Cummins, we were worried that we were going to run into supply chain issues, which we totally did. Every time we found a cool part, it was back order this, back order that, never going to get it. We even considered just not doing the project and just throwing in the towel. But you know what? We're not really good at that. So we decided that we're just going to take all the parts that we have on our shelf, throw it on the truck, and see what happens. So if that makes you happy, stay tuned, because we got more for you. Yeah, we've got here is a new to us 07 Ram. Bit of a legacy truck, a 5.9 common rail. A lot of people are looking for this. We managed to find one of these, relatively low miles. It's got like 126.
Yeah, 126,000.
126 grand.
Which really isn't that bad on a truck these days. I mean, these engines are known for their reliability and they're kind of long distance, so it's really a solid truck at 126,000 miles.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got some big plans for this thing. We are going to replace that intake. I'm not sure what brand that is, but I'm more of a fan of a sealed intake myself anyways. So
Yep.
we're going to get that taken care of. This Banks Monster Ram is going to stay. I am a fan of that. We're going to get some exhaust on this thing. And we're going to do some tuning. But before all that, we are going to, like you mentioned before, give it the old once over. Go through and just make sure that nothing's going to come around and bite us in the rear later on. So we're going to take advantage of the time that we have available now, while we're waiting for all the other power parts to come in, and really just get the basics down pat. So let's get this thing on the rack and start going through it and check all the fluids, either drain and replace as needed, top off as needed. Let's get the wheels off, look at the brakes, check driveline, check all that kind of stuff, and then I say we go take it for a rip.
Sounds good to me.
Excellent. Okay, so at the front here, similar to the rear, we've got some nicer Bilstein shocks on there. Again, somebody took the time to take care of this thing. Looks like there's a small spacer up here, nothing too monumental there. But control arms seem to be in good shape. Stock springs still. Brakes look decent. Those are getting replaced anyways, but they do look okay. Can't tell if someone's been in here for the unit bearing yet. Jesse, what do you think?
Yeah.
I mean,
looks like, a little newer cotter key there, and you see some anti-seize a little bit on the threads, so it could have been a part here at a short time. I mean, considering these trucks usually go about 100,000 miles on a set of unit bearings, just in normal driving. I mean, in our area, maybe 50,000, sometimes 20,000, depending on if you're hitting potholes all the time. So this one, I mean, well, I guess our rotor's unbolted there, but when we had the tire and wheel on, it didn't feel like there was a whole bunch of slop. Driving it, didn't feel like it. The tire has good even wear, which means nothing's really worn out in the front, other than the center's a little more worn out. It looks like they're about 70 PSI on the tires.
yeah, I did notice driving in here, this thing was hard as a rock.
The ride seems to get smoother.
Yeah.
And if, as we can tell in the rear, if he was using this thing for towing RVs and stuff like that, those tires are probably, just about maxed out, which unloaded tends to shatter the teeth.
Yeah, drives like an old 70s Dodge instead of an 07 Dodge.
Absolutely. Yeah, everything looks good.
So right now we're just checking over everything in the back of the truck, making sure there's nothing super out of order. We can see somebody's added on some helper airbags there for hauling a little extra weight, and we saw there's some an RV plug in it and everything, and it used to have a gooseneck hitch, you can see here. So somebody was towing trailers with it. It's got some nice newer Bilstein shocks. Our disc brakes back here aren't super worn out, which is good to see. Somebody hasn't been just riding the brakes and destroying everything. So it's all looking pretty good. Our exhaust hangers are pretty tight. It's not flopping around and hitting stuff. It's really a well taken care of truck. I always like to take a little zip tie, bend it over. It's a good dipstick for your your fluid. Looks like we're right at the top. So, and the fluid's nice and clean. Doesn't look like there's a whole bunch of metal or anything, so probably recently been serviced, since usually it's going to be a little gray or something if it's got some miles on it. So
Yeah.
probably right before it got sold, I'm sure it went, you know, to Jiffy Lube or somewhere, and they had, you know, threw the whole catalog at it as far as fluid changes.
Yeah. That's good. We got rear end is good to go. We're gonna work our way forward to the transfer case. It's still fairly red.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Means we haven't grenaded anything in there yet.
Yeah, that's always a plus.
Yep, nice and clean, just like the rear diff.
Good.
So we don't have to worry about that. Well, oil's black, but what diesel engine doesn't have black oil in it? Even
Yeah.
a couple 100 miles after oil change, that's what it's going to look like. Like we're right in the middle of the good land there on the dipstick, so put a half a quart in it and top it off.
Power steering. That looks to be okay as well. Color's still good.
Now you do have to check your transmission fluid while it's running, which we did earlier when we had it running, but just to show that, you know, color's starting to, it's still red, but it's getting a little, maybe a little tint to it, so it's about ready for a transmission service, which we will be doing when we add a couple extra little goodies on.
So, thus far, everything looks to be in ship shape. And for the most part, this is a, I don't want to say, doesn't need anything truck, but, you know,
it's a well taken care of truck. I mean, it was
Yeah.
owned by an well, I'm not going to say an elderly gentleman, but an older gentleman
Yeah.
that knew how to take care of his truck. He knew what he wanted. He knew he wanted a couple tasteful upgrades here and there to take what was a great truck from the factory to the next level, just to, you know, perform a little bit better so that he could tow a trailer or, you know, tow his family around, whatever he was doing.
yeah. I mean, even the battery connections.
Yeah.
There's hardly any corrosion on there or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's something that, you know, not even that old of a truck, if you're not taking care of, you know, keeping the right preventative maintenance on everything under the hood, that's, you know, the stuff that really starts to pop up. And, you know, 10 years into a truck, you're, doing battery cables, you're doing stuff like that. If you're not paying attention, you know, every time you do an oil change, you know, cleaning stuff up, and doing those little things really helps make a truck like this last.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do on the older trucks that I get is go through and clean the grounds.
Yes.
You'd be amazed how, especially when you start getting into those like 90s era trucks, you know, you got power windows or something like that, and it just, the windows don't seem to go up and down as fast. The radio's dim, and you go through and clean up all the grounds, and all of a sudden things start working well again.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Most people don't realize that most wiring problems don't come from a bad sensor or a broken wire or something. It's bad ground connections.
Yeah.
And depending on what your climate is, you know, stuff can just start to rust and corrode a little bit, and you might think, oh no, it looks just fine looking under the hood, until you take that bolt off and realize it's just rust underneath.
Cool. Well, let's we'll get the tires back on, and I think it's time to take this thing for a quick test drive.
Sounds
We go for
good.
a coffee run.
Yeah.
It's about that time. We did drop the pressure in the tires. We found out that the rears were at least 60.
Yeah.
That's what the gauge went up to. And now they're set at 46 all the way around. And believe it or not, I don't know if you can see me and Jesse bouncing around right now, but for a stock truck making fairly stock power, I mean, it's shifting when it's supposed to. It feels like a...
And it's smooth. It's not herky jerky, slamming into gear, you know, it's just there.
Yeah.
Doing its job.
Positive engagement.
Yeah.
I will say it is fairly nice to know that, you know, I can kind of lean on it a little bit. I'm not going to smoke out everybody behind me.
Yeah. I mean, this thing definitely feels like if you were, you know, going to pick up a new project truck with a trailer, or hauling your RV or horse trailer, or you know, one of the many things you do with a diesel pickup, it feels like it's got the oomph for it. So
yeah, like I wouldn't feel super short on power.
Yeah,
you know. And the good thing is you're working within your means. So obviously we've got no gauges in here or anything like that. We're just basically running off of, you know, RPM.
Yeah.
And speedometer, and that's pretty much it. But cruising right now, we're at 65 at about, I don't know, 1800 RPM. And the tires too. I know we've talked about that before as well, but these are, what are these, E-rated tires, F-rated tires?
So they're pretty stiff.
Yeah, fairly stiff tire on an 18. We don't have a whole lot of sidewall to work with. I mean, even airing them down to 46 all the way around, there's still zero bulge on the sidewall.
Oh yeah.
This will be somewhat of a good test here. We're gonna do a U-turn. So while this does have like a inch or inch and a half leveling kit in the front, it does still run the stock track bar, so technically the axle is shifted. It's not centered. And we do have larger tires, so let's see if they were sized properly when we crank this thing all the way over and do a U-turn. It's a Dodge Ram! Yeah, we're going on the curb.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
At least there was a nice wheelchair ramp to get started on.
Yeah. All right, hopefully we can have a little bit more fun on this on-ramp. Is this the actual on-ramp? Yeah, we're gonna do it anyways.
Westbound and down.
Yeah. Hammer down, boys. Last thing I need to kick this thing.
You don't want to drift the corner.
Yeah. Give her the beans. So that's everything she's got right now. I mean, the transmission did everything it was supposed to do right there. It wasn't slipping, no flare shifts, and you know, now we're doing, I'd say 75, which is a pretty average speed people travel at. And I mean, speedometer wise, we're sitting, what's that, about 21?
Yeah, so that ain't bad.
You definitely feel that.
Yeah, now you can really, that other 10 miles an hour you know, you can really feel every seam in this concrete road.
Like I mentioned before, Y-style steering. The fact that we're actually able to hold it straight with Y-style steering should basically be an award in itself.
Yeah. On
a 2007. Thanks, Ram.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, we've got two like dinosaur diesel guys reviewing a 5.9 common rail, basically.
Yeah.
Jesse's into 7.3 IDIs and I'm into 7.3 Power Strokes, so it's kind of...
Yeah, we're basically, this truck's got a lot to live up to is what we're saying, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was 45 degrees this morning and started up, so I guess we're already...
Yeah.
You know, you definitely don't feel like you're gonna all of a sudden kick the tires loose or something, but it'll move.
Yeah. It's more sensation of speed with a diesel because you get that instant torque.
Yes.
And torque is what gets you going, you know. And it's, so yeah, it snaps your neck back a little bit when you hammer into it from a stop, and I think that's really what sells the diesel pickups to the crowd of, you know, young hot rodders, is that there's this instant, you know, feeling of power.
Right.
And like you said, you know, it's the money per horsepower on a diesel is so cheap compared to, you know, a 460 Ford or a 454 Chevy. You buy a square body Chevy with a 454 from the smog era and you're 157 horsepower.
Yeah. And
to put it up to 400 horsepower, you're going to be a bit of money into it, even with an old Chevrolet.
Yeah.
A 460, you're going to be double that. I'm a Ford guy. I'm totally unashamed to say that.
Yeah.
But with a diesel pickup, like you said, you get a tuner and an exhaust and a cold air intake, another 100 horsepower really isn't that hard to get.
No, and even at that point, you know, the truck, if you were to dyno it, may only make, you know, just south of 400 horsepower. The thing is, though, you're going to be making
550.
Yeah, damn near like 900 foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah.
If you've never been in a truck that makes 900 foot-pounds of torque, you're gonna swear like you got 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
And that's where the fault comes in, where you get a lot of people that are sitting there like, oh yeah, I did a tuner, intake exhaust, 700 horsepower truck. Like, no, it's not. I know why you think it's that, but it's really not. Like, have you ever ridden in a 700 horsepower truck before? Yeah, my buddy's got one. What injectors does he have? Stock?
Yeah, not a 700 horsepower truck.
Well, not me personally, but a guy I know.
All right, so we're gonna get this thing in the shop, and we are going to start putting some of these basic mods in there. And we're gonna take this thing out for a rip again. I'm excited.